And he was doing this.
Yeah.
So when you came out, I thought that's what you're doing. So yours is just
You got to play keys.
okay. Got
You know what I'm
it.
saying what they doing. I'm not good enough.
So when you first came out with that, was there any resistance?
Oh, that's all it was. It was only resistance until somebody cool did it. Who did that? Who made it cool? Snoop. Snoop did it. Then it was totally fine. Everybody was like, okay, I guess we can listen to it.
As you can tell from the clip, T-Pain was basically talking about Autotune and how Snoop Dogg made Autotune cool. Now, this is interesting because T-Pain started out doing Autotune before Snoop Dogg made that song, which they're alluding to. There's the Sensual Seduction song, very classic hip hop song. It was something different from Snoop that we've seen before. You know, it had him singing, of course, and it had him just talking about love, which is usually something different we hear from Snoop. But T-Pain, as the grandfather of Autotune and hip hop, not music, because of course Roger Troutman had that title. And, T-Pain took it to another level in hip hop, being able to sing with it. Most people say he could sing without it, but it's made things sound better and more interesting. And it was a different sound in hip hop, which you always have to appreciate the different sounds in hip hop. And I'll get into that later, what he did for hip hop as a whole. But T-Pain is speaking from a perspective, I believe, of just, he felt he was hated on a lot when he came out with the Autotune. Because a lot of times when in music or anything, when you come out with new things, people are going to have backlash, going to have resistance toward it. And he felt that same those same kind of feelings when he first came out. So it seemed like he was alluding to that Snoop Dogg was cool enough to make it cool, and people wasn't going to hate on Snoop Dogg because he has a lot of power within hip hop and he was already established. And when he did it, it seemed pretty cool, and it was, a commercial hit, and it kind of crossed over to pop somewhat, and a lot of people loved the song. Now, T-Pain, on the other hand, he was singing R&B, which is designed for your, natural voice, and usually people didn't have any known enhancements, because we know that some people probably had enhancements, but he had an obvious enhancement, which people made unique, which became very commercialized because they were selling microphones with the Autotune on it, like for kids. People were buying those and it was falling off the shelves, He was very marketable at that time. So that's another thing people had resentment towards. When you think about Soulja Boy, when he first came out with the dancing and hip hop, people were very against it. But then everybody started coming out with dance songs and these catchy dance hits. And, people didn't see that as hip hop until, people like Franchise Boy started doing it, D4L. A lot of other groups in Atlanta started doing it. And when they did it, it became more cool. So I can understand where T-Pain was saying there. And he had a lot of backlash from rappers, very established rappers like Jay-Z. Jay-Z had the song Death of Autotune, which was considered a diss toward T-Pain. And people were, on Jay-Z's side, it seems like, saying that he wasn't hip-hop. But T-Pain, in Essential, he was pop, to a large degree. He was R&B and rap, but he was very commercial. He had hits. Every time he came out with a song, it was going number one. He was selling, millions and millions of ringtones. He was just very marketable. He had a lot of appearances, and he's still somewhat marketable today, as he's still doing TV shows and different appearances. I remember Joe Budden as well. He had a song, Who Killed Hip Hop, and he was talking about how everybody started doing that funny voice stuff, and he was talking about Autotune. So there were a lot of disses toward T-Pain when he first came out, but then other people started doing it and made it cool. Similar to back in the day when people were mocking Ja Rule for singing, and now you couldn't, all the songs have elements of that or mimics that same kind of style. J. Cole once said, back when you didn't need back then when you didn't need a melody, but now you need a melody for your songs to make it work, to make it pop, to get it on TikTok, to get the song, circulating right where it needs to be. So that's just the formula nowadays. But back then, they frowned upon that. But I understand what T-Pain was saying, and like when he said Snoop made it cool. But in my opinion, Lil Wayne made Autotune cool, because that Sensual Seduction song from Snoop Dogg came out in late 2007. And Lil Wayne first started on Autotune, from what I can recall, was the Shawty Lowe's They Know remix. And Lil Wayne, just absolutely killed the song. Of course, this was during his prime time years, and everything he was putting out was gold. So when he started doing the Autotune, I started hearing Autotune everywhere, from Young Berg, which is his name is Hitmakers now because he's a producer. But you started hearing all these different people using Autotune. And I believe Lil Wayne made it cool, in my opinion. But of course, T-Pain knows more about this stuff than I do. But that's the way I felt about it, because when I heard Lil Wayne doing it, and I seen everyone else started doing it, but it was the same time as the Sensual Seduction came out. So very interesting timing to see that start around the late 2007 years. But this was way before Future, of course. Future didn't come out to around 2012. But not trying to diminish the effect that Snoop has, because he has a lot of influence in hip hop and just society in general. But Lil Wayne was the top rapper at the time, and he had the most juice in hip hop at the time because he was releasing the Carter's albums. He had all these different mixtapes out, so he had much as influence as Snoop Dogg back then. But of course, things change and fluctuates. But back then, he was that artist. But I think Autotune was just getting a bad rap anyway, and I'm glad that Lil Wayne did embrace the Autotune, because it was a different sound in hip hop, and hip hop should be more than just the status quo, and it should evolve like other genres as well. So hip hop, needs a uplift sometimes. I know a lot of people are resistant to it, but you have to go with the flow sometimes and be able to adjust, because we know adaptability is the strongest key to survival. It's not strength or speed or anything like that. It's your ability to adapt, especially with how fast times are changing now. So, and Lil Wayne released a whole album doing Autotune, that Rebirth album. He had some classic songs on there. That album went platinum as well, but that came out several years later. But he did release a whole entire album just doing Autotune and doing love songs. And on the Carter 4, he had How to Love, which he was using Autotune as well. So a lot of people started embracing Autotune, but I think T-Pain and all of these guys, T-Pain really helped usher in, no pun intended, a lot of new artists that uses Autotune, like, Lil Baby, who uses a lot when he's rapping, Future, Travis Scott, and Young Thug, which T-Pain got a lot of criticism for the way, well, Young Thug got a lot of criticism from T-Pain, the way he used it, because he said he was using it wrong. But a lot of artists started using it while they were rapping. And like I said, most of the artists, I never even heard their real voices. I think I just heard Lil Baby's voice for the first time a couple months ago, because most of the time when he's rapping, it's with the auto-tune. So you really don't hear it. So, but it sounded different, and it became a staple in hip hop, as, Travis Scott has probably taken it to the next level with his, crossover ability and the songs that he had, and just having the chop and screw music and all these different things, being from Texas. So he was able to popularize it even more, as more so as Future and Lil Baby, not to the T-Pain level, but he is a big commercial artist, and he has all this different success. So but it was just a great time in hip hop when Autotune first came out, because everybody was enamored with the sound, and it was something new. We just didn't hear the status quo of the 90s hip hop and early 2000s. We got a new sound, and people were able to experiment and being able to have fun with the music, because you can sing without being criticized for your voice, because it enhanced your voice to make you sound more aesthetically pleasing. So, thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast, and until next time, see you next time.